Hello and welcome to Hekate Today, the podcast about modern Hekatean witchcraft in a modern and urban context. My name is Jade Alcestis. I'm a Hekatean witch living in North London, UK, and I will be your host. Over the series, I hope to talk to you about what modern Hekatean witchcraft is, who Hekate is, and explore some of our myths and practices. Why do we celebrate the Deipnon? Why do we talk about Hecate's epithets? Why is triplicity and liminality so important in the practice of modern Hecatean witchcraft, and much, much more? I'll also share with you some prayers, guided meditations and spells, and I hope to give you lots of information should you want to explore working with Hekate. In this first episode, I will just give you a brief introduction to Hekate and her background. And as I'm recording this on the night of the dark moon, I'm going to talk a little bit about the dark moon and how that works in modern Hecatean witchcraft, and talk a little bit about the Deipnon and what we do on the Deipnon. And I want to discuss some reasons that modern witches may want to consider working with Hekate as a goddess. So let's get started. Hekate is known as a Greek goddess primarily. However, there is a fair amount of evidence that her myths predate Greece and the Greek pantheon, and Hekate herself and goddesses that are incredibly similar to Hekate have shown up in regions near to Greece before we can date the writings about the Olympian pantheon. So she doesn't necessarily belong specifically to Greece. She's a bit of an outsider, and I think this is one of the reasons that many witches come to become interested in Hekate. Us ourselves are often outsiders. We are often part of marginalised groups, and as you'll come to see, Hekate is very much a goddess of the marginalised. Some versions of her myths place Hekate as a titaness predating the Olympians, and it's said that during the Titan Wars she fought on the side of the Olympians, and this made Zeus, who became the king of the gods, view her with favour and grant her certain powers over the three worlds, the heaven, the middle world and the earth. And we'll go into a lot of detail about what these realms, the upper, the middle and the under realm, mean in terms of Hecatean practice, and why she is very much a goddess of three ways and triplicity. Hekate is primarily known as a goddess of witches or queen of the witches. She's also well known as a goddess of the crossroads, particularly the kind of crossroads that part in three directions, and she's known as the keeper of the keys, particularly keeper of the keys of the universe, Pantos Kosmokleidios. Hekate is a far more complex goddess than this. Her epithets, the names she's known by, such as Hekate Casonia, Hekate Propylaea, Hekate Soteria, are many. There are hundreds of epithets associated with Hekate, meaning she is a complex and very all-encompassing deity. There's little that doesn't come under Hekate's dominion, and she's also been known as the world soul, suggesting that she is somewhat more than a limited deity who, say, just covers the realms of love or war or healing. She's considered to be an actual source deity, though slightly more complex than Gaia, which would be the personification of the earth. She's more like the spiritual personification of the earth and the heavens and the underworld and all things. So it's hard to view Hekate is being easy to put in a box as just a witch goddess or a magic goddess or a crossroads goddess. She's many, many things. And during the series, we will discuss some of her epithets in a lot more depth. So tonight is the night of the Deipnon, that is the night of the dark moon. For those of you who follow astrology, this would be the astrological new moon, when the moon is at 0% illumination. From a Hekatean perspective, we consider this to be the dark moon, and the new moon to be the night after, when there is a 1 or 2% illumination sliver of the moon reappearing in the sky. The dark moon is considered by us sacred to Hekate, and we celebrate this night. This goes back potentially to an ancient Greek tradition of leaving a meal at the threshold of the door or at the crossroads to feed Hekate's horde of restless spirits and pacify her. This could also be considered an act of devotion. Offerings left at the threshold of the crossroads were not limited to food. Sometimes they would be the sweepings from the house, and that which people wanted to get rid of. And it may seem strange to offer your sweepings and dust and dirt for a goddess, but Hekate is also known as the eater of filth. And we don't believe this degrades her as much as she takes what needs to be discarded, what longs to die within you, and transforms it. So, in a modern context, the offering that we might leave to Hekate on the night of the dark moon is something that has been living inside us, that doesn't serve us anymore. Perhaps we hold anger about an old relationship, or sadness or grief that has been living inside us too long, and we might offer up those things to Hekate to take them from us and transform them, and these are considered completely appropriate offerings. We might also leave physical food on the understanding that this is likely to be eaten by animals. And there is a theory that the crossroads and threshold offerings on the dark moon in ancient Greece were a form of charity and intended to be eaten by the homeless. We don't necessarily have hard evidence of that. So most of us, when we leave food type offerings, we do try to make sure that it's nothing that would hurt an animal that might eat it. So maybe not something like chocolate that might be poisonous to canines and cats, for example, or anything that contains seeds that might be able to grow in a climate but mess with the ecosystem there because they're not native. It is traditional maybe to leave certain offerings, and they have a level of controversy, such as garlic is a very traditional offering, but we know that this really isn't good for any dog passing that might eat it, and pomegranate seeds are another traditional offering to Hekate, which in certain climates that may not be good for the local environment. So that's a matter of your own conscience if you are thinking of leaving food offerings for Hekate on the dark moon. Maybe just think a little bit about what those offerings are and know that spiritual offerings are just as appropriate as food. It is traditional when offerings are left for Hekate at the crossroads, particularly on the night of the Deipnon, that once you have left them, you don't look back. This is rumoured to be because the spirits do not like to be watched eating, and it could potentially be bad luck to look back, or maybe something you don't want to follow you home will follow you if you do. You can take this with a pinch of salt. I don't think myself there's any danger in leaving offerings. If you happen to glance behind you, I don't think you're going to end up with nasty spirits attached to you if you believe in such things. But if you want to practice some due regard for tradition, then you should leave your offering, say a few words in prayer if you wish to, turn around and walk away and not look behind you. Another word of caution I would give you, obviously, if you're going out on the night of the dark moon, the darkest night of the month, where there's little illumination in the sky, to somewhere private where you can leave an offering, do make sure it's somewhere safe for you to be alone at night. There is no problem with doing this during the day, or taking a friend with you, or taking your dog with you. Make sure in all your practices that you're safe. An injured or wounded devotee is not in a position to be a good and active devotee, so there's absolutely no requirement in any of your practice to put yourself in danger. On Hekate's holy night of the dark moon, I tend not to practice magic as such. I tend to leave this night just for devotion, but sometimes I may practice what I consider to be devotional arts. Divination is one of the arts that Hekate teaches, so I might choose this night to cast my tarot spread for myself or someone else for the rest of the month, but I will rarely practice active magic. If I wish to practice magic around this time, I'll wait till the next night, the night of the dark moon. But again, this practice varies. There's no one true and right way among Hekatean witches, so others may choose to do their most powerful spells on the night of the dark moon, and that's absolutely okay. The dark moon lends itself to banishings and bindings, letting go of things you wish to let go of, getting rid of things you wish to get rid of. It's a good time for decluttering your drawers, sorting out your kitchen, throwing out what you don't need. It's a good time for cutting the cords of relationships that don't serve you anymore. It's a good time to bind that colleague who has been harassing you at work from doing so. It's a good time to do magic that concerns endings. And then if you feel moved to want to fill the void that was left by the things you let go of, maybe use the new moon, the beginning of the waxing moon even, to do spells to attract new things into your life that are going to serve you. We will talk about the Deipnon in a lot more detail in a future episode, so let's move on to why a witch might want to work with Hekate. On an obvious level, Hekate is Queen of the Witches. Witches belong to her. She's also a teacher of witchcraft. She, in her mythology, or her Greek mythology, was rumoured to be the one who taught Medea how to use pharmakia, which is botanical magic, and also Circa, or Kirk, depending how you pronounce it. Hekate is very good at presenting us with the lessons we need to learn and helping us develop our witchcraft and our magical skill. Also, Hekate, while maybe seen as some as a dark goddess, is more of a goddess of balance. Yes, she has her chthonic aspect, her underworld aspect, but she also has her aspect of Satyra, the saviour, her upper world aspect, her middle world aspect, dealing with the real world and healing. So there's a lot to be gained in terms of balance and personal development from working with Hekate, and potentially releasing your fears around what you may consider to be dark witchcraft. It often is found that our fears about what appears to be dark is actually fears of our shadow self, the aspects within us that we don't really want to look at and don't really want to confront. And it's by confronting those aspects that we can learn to fully accept ourselves and transform and change the things we don't want to or can't accept. Some people find themselves almost spontaneously drawn to Hekate, and I think this is because Hekate is more than just a goddess of the crossroads. She's more a goddess of liminal space, the spaces in between where transformation and change happens. So people sometimes find themselves drawn to her at times in their life when maybe some upheavals happened or some big changes are occurring, and she tends to present as a guiding and stabilizing force at those times that kind of help people to navigate those changes, and when the road turns in ways that you may not necessarily want them to turn, she can help you make sure that the destination you end up at is the destination that you choose to end up at as a result of those turnings. While Hekate doesn't tend to be much of a coddling force, she's very big on personal responsibility and standing in your own power. She can present as very comforting. Many people have said to me that Hekate started showing signs of being around and calling that person to work with her when they were at their lowest ebb, when no one else was really there. Hekate was, and this comes back to her role as a goddess of the marginalised and her role as a helper and an empowerer. She doesn't necessarily help you by patting you on the head and telling you everything's going to be all right. She helps you by teaching you the skills and giving you the power and confidence to rescue yourself and so solve your own problems. And I think this is an incredibly empowering energy to work with. And if your values are feminist, also quite feminist. As to myself, I began to work with Hekate at a time when my life was very much at a crossroads. And there is a story behind that, which I will tell you about at some point in the near future. For now, I think I'll wrap it up. Hopefully you have an idea of what this podcast is about and the sort of things we're going to be talking about in future episodes. So I would like to close with a prayer. And this prayer is a section from an ancient translation. It's around 1,000 years old and translated from Greek. I'm just going to read the first couple of sections. Three-faced Hekate, come to me, beloved mistress. Graciously hear my sacred spells. Image of night, youthful one, dawn-born light-bringer to mortals, who rides upon fierce-eyed bulls. O queen, you who drive your chariot on equal course with Helios. You dance with the triple form of the triple graces as you revel with the stars. You are justice and the thread of fates, Clotho, Lachesis, Atropos. O three-headed one, you are Persephone, Megara, Alecto. O one of many shapes, who arm your hands with terrible dark glowing lamps, who shakes locks of fearsome serpents at your brow, whose mouths send forth the roar of bulls, whose womb is thick with reptile scales, at whose shoulders a rows of venomous serpents, across your back beneath murderous chains. O night bellower, lover of servitude, bull-faced and bull-headed one, you have the eyes of bulls and the voice of dogs. Your forms are hidden with the legs of lions. Your ankle is wolf-shaped, and savage dogs are friendly to you. Wherefore they call you Hekate, many-named Mene, cleaving the air like arrow-shooting Artemis. O goddess of 4 faces, 4 names, 4 ways, Artemis, Persephone, dear shooter, night shiner, thrice resounding, triple-voiced, 3-headed, thrice-named Selene, O trident-bearing one of 3 faces, 3 necks, 3 ways, who holds undying flame in triple baskets. You frequent the 3 ways and a mistress of the 3 decades. Be gracious unto me, who is invoking you, and hearken favourably. And that just about wraps it up. If you would like to read more about Hekate, you can visit my website, www.hekateswheel.home.blog. Hekate there is spelled Hekates. And if you want to grab yourself some witchy soaps, accessories, candles, or prayer beads, you can visit my Etsy store at www.etsy.com/UK/shop/bath, book and candle. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.